Hi, everyone. Welcome to CMO Chats. I'm Andy Weiss. I'm the CMO of Ceipal, 6 months into the job. So good to be here.
Excellent. It's great to have you, Andy. Thank you so much for doing this with us. So I suppose the first thing we'd love to learn a little bit is talk us through your sort of journey within, the marketing space. You mentioned 6 months. I'm sure that's a transition period as well, sort of understanding all of the elements of the job. I'd love to learn a bit more about, yourself and the position that you're in right now.
I kind of think of myself as a little bit of an atypical CMO in the sense that I bring together both what I like to call brand storytelling and demand generation. And it harkens back to kind of my youth. I grew up in a house where, or one of our houses that we lived in, my dad had a darkroom for photography. And so I became a bit of a photo buff kind of as part of that. And the way I think about and look at photography kind of falls into two camps. There's the image capturing and what you put in the frame. What's the perspective? Are you low or are you high? Is it landscape? Is it portrait? And all the subject stuff that goes into that image capturing. And then back in the day, we'd go into a dark room and develop the film and expose it to light and paper and chemicals and all kinds of stuff and develop that. Now it's digital and manipulating things in that fashion, and increasingly today with AI. But at the end of the day, that image portion isn't finished until you go through that processing component as well. And so what happens is then when we bring those two things together, I can then print or hand or share this image with you, Austen, and say, hey, here's the finished image. And it tells that full story. And the way I think about it and look at marketing, it's those two pieces kind of coming together. The image capturing is that brand storytelling component, and the image processing is that demand generation, demand capture component. And that finished product that I'm handing to you is that bottom line growth for the organization. And so what I've been able to do throughout my career is, having started on the agency side and then the second half of my career transitioning into the corporate side of marketing, both in B2B and B2C, increasingly B2B, is bring those two pieces together and helping organizations in a variety of different industries grow and scale their business by bringing those two things together. Today, that's at Ceipal in the recruitment and staffing software business.
I love that. So listen, I like the analogy using of the photography there. So that really leads me into the sort of next thing that I'd love to learn a bit about is, marketing is such a vastness, right? There are so many elements to marketing, as you were saying before. It's not as simple as just one and done. So talk me through sort of the biggest challenges that you're finding right now at Ceipal within the marketing realm and how you're planning on tackling those going forward.
So that's a great question. And I think as marketers, we're constantly faced with an array of challenges, lots of things coming at us. And I've been in this business long enough to kind of face a lot of those. And many of them I characterize as bright, shiny objects. You get your bright, shiny objects that are, back in the day, it was social media, it was Facebook, it was augmented reality, it was, Web3, it was ABM. You have your leadership coming to you and saying, hey, I just heard about this new thing called Twitter, or this new thing called Facebook, or hey, what's Web3, or should we be doing NFTs? And so you're constantly getting bombarded with those bright, shiny objects that you need to figure out how to unpack and do something with. And then you also have the economic and market conditions that kind of ebb and flow, and how do you navigate those things? But I think at its core, marketing's kind of at this weird inflection point. And what I mean by that is organizations outside of, those bright shiny objects and marketing conditions, organizations are trying to unpack or better understand the role that marketing plays within their organization. So if you read any headlines, it's, this organization's getting rid of the CMO, or this one's, adding a CRO, or this one's dividing up the role of marketing and moving it into different departments. But at its core, I think it comes down to our marketing leaders and how we're demonstrating the value that we're bringing to an organization. So like last week, Peter Mahoney, is now CMO of GoTo, shared an article talking about, the pathway for a CMO might be actually the COO type of role. And what he was sharing in that was, hey, the role of marketing is multifaceted. We touch a lot of different things. And the more we can demonstrate the value that we bring to an organization, the better off our teams are going to be, because our teams feel a lot of that influx of whether it's the bright shiny objects, the economy, now marketing reports to a CRO. So all of those things are kind of in response to that. But as marketing leaders, we need to lean into getting into those conversations, whether it's operations, whether it's finance, whether it's data, and not only getting into those conversations, but earning and keeping our seat at the table by demonstrating our understanding of the business and how we marketers can help add value to those pieces. And I think at its core, that's the biggest challenge. Those bright shiny objects in the economy are going to continue to happen because those things happen in a cyclical nature. But the true piece is what the value that as marketers, what are we bringing to that organization?
No, I couldn't agree more. And I've had a lot of conversations with marketing leaders, and one thing that I've taken away, and no one's been, I don't want to say is bold to say this, but I've sort of come to a mental conclusion, if you will, which is I personally believe that marketers are the most adaptive individuals within any company. When you look at sales, they focus on generating. When you look at finance, they focus on the bottom line. When you look at operations, they focus on the data. When you look at marketing, they have to focus on all of those aspects and try and bring them all together into one, and taking into consideration every single department that they work with. And that bright shiny object that you mentioned before, another key element right there, right? There is so many new things coming into the world, not even just the marketing world, but the world in general, that marketers are trying to understand, can I leverage this? Is this something that I can use to my advantage? Is this something that we should be putting funds into? So yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think with that, how does your company sort of stay ahead of its competitors when it comes to marketing? I think that's a good segue into sort of the next question, which is, how are you trying to be ahead of the curve in comparison to the sort of competitors that are in your industry at the moment?
That flexibility component is a job requirement. And the only way that you're going to do that is to continue to be a student of your industry, the space, and your market. And what really helps us do it is, and what I'm trying to put in place and upskill and transition my team through, is how do we set up a marketing motion where we're constantly iterating and evolving and learning. And Ceipal, by its very nature, is a disruptor in the space. We started out in IT and engineering, or IT engineering, more specifically software engineering staffing and more and general staffing. Today, we're actually launching into a new vertical in healthcare. So it's a big day for us. But as a disruptor, we can't do what everyone else is doing. So it's a job requirement, essentially, for us to be flexible, adaptive, and figure out what's going on and not do what everyone else is doing. So be a student of what are our competitors doing now, and then let's understand what the market wants, what our customers and prospects are looking for, and are competitors solving that need, or is there a gap? And what can we do to fill that gap? And that's the space that we want to play in, because one, it's an unmet need, but two, it allows us to create differentiation and a moat around the products and services that we provide. So that's how we're doing it.
It's an interesting approach, and I think, again, to sort of paraphrase, I sort of think the message that you're saying is that sometimes when you're sort of walking through the forest, don't try and look for the path, but sometimes create your own, and I think that's really what your sort of message is here. Sometimes there's so much going on that it's easy to follow someone else's, but sometimes the best step forward is for you to just say, you know what, we're going to create our own path, and we're going to try and be the individuals that stand out within our own rights. And I think that's a really strong message for marketers in general as well, right? Which is, sometimes following the crowd is the easy option, but the best option is to just sort of, take that leap of faith and create something of your own, or at least create the right path for yourself.
Yeah, and it needs to be on brand. Like that disruptor, that off the beaten path approach works for Ceipal because that's our brand ethos. It's not going to work for everyone. And there's other categories that I've been in where our brand was not necessarily that disruptor. We were the leader, and so we needed to take a different stand. But what is important in all of this, and it comes back to kind of that demand generation component, is understanding that underlying data and what's meaningful and relevant to your brand and your customers, but then ultimately what's the return, what's the ROI on that, and knowing when to step off the path and when to stay on it, and placing the right bets.
Yeah, no, I love that. So just to sort of bring to conclusion this chat here, in one word, how would you describe the role of a CMO?
The word that comes to mind is similar to your flexibility, and that is navigator. And I think as a CMO, you need to navigate not only the market and marketing. So there's, customer needs and wants, brand storytelling, demand creation, and capture, and all the data that's associated with it. But then it's also navigating company strategy. So it's sales and customer success to grow and retain customers. It's navigating with your product team to help grow and evolve the product to meet demand or find new ways of evolving the product to grow and scale in that fashion. And then with HR and operations, and particularly with HR, building and having that, navigating that relationship so that you can grow a talent pool and retain and keep your current talent motivated and engaged. And then you get into, navigating your own people. And then lastly, the thing that kind of wraps everything up is change management. Change is a constant. And as a CMO, your ability to understand and help your team navigate that change, pull the right levers, because we can only sustain so much individually and as a team and as an organization. And so knowing when to push, when to pull, and keep your team and the organization focused on the challenge at hand. So that's why as a CMO, you need to be a navigator.